Hello everybody, welcome to our YouTube show, the Biotech Shield, where IT security meets science. And this is where we provide IT insights for the biotech industry. I'm your host, Fernando Leon, and the title of today's show is The Compliance Illusion in Biotech Security. All right, so let's get this show started. Now, you passed your audit, your policies are in place, your controls are documented, but let me ask you something. Most security teams avoid. Are you actually secure right now or just compliant on paper? Because in biotech, that gap is where intellectual property is lost. Timelines are delayed and valuation takes a huge hit. So today we're gonna challenge assumptions and force a different way of thinking about, security. Now, I'm going to talk several topics here. So my first topic is the comfortable lie we don't talk about. Because this is where most biotech firms quietly get it wrong. There's a belief that, once you've aligned with compliance frameworks such as HIPAA, FDA, GXP controls, you've crossed a threshold. You've done the work. You've invested in tools. You've passed the audit. Yay! And naturally, that leads to confidence. Management has that peace of mind. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Compliance creates comfort, not control. And in biotech, comfort is dangerous because while your team is aligning with documentation, attackers are focused on one thing: behavior. Now, attackers, they're not asking, are you compliant? They're asking, what can we access right now? How long can we stay undetected? Where is the real visibility gap? And if you can't answer those questions with certainty, then you don't have control. So let's take this a step further. What does this actually put at risk? Because this isn't just about systems. No, not at all. What's actually on the line when we talk about security in biotech, the conversation is often framed around data protection, compliance, risk management, but that framing is incomplete because what's really at stake is the following: intellectual property tied to years of research, clinical trial timelines that determine speed to market, regulatory positioning and approvals, investor confidence, and company valuation. Now, think about this. If an attacker gains access and operates undetected, they're not just stealing data. They're observing processes, extracting research, mapping your environment, and potentially doing it over weeks or worse, months. This is where firms get blindsided, not because they had no controls, but because they did not have real-time visibility into what was happening. And this is where compliance starts to break down because compliance was never designed, to catch bad behavior, suspicious behavior. Now, let's review compliance versus reality. Let's separate these two ideas that are often blended together. Compliance asks, do you have controls? Are they documented? Are they reviewed periodically? Security, this is what security requires. Are threats being detected right now in real time? Are anomalies being investigated within minutes? Can your team respond before damage spreads? Those are not the same thing. And this is where biotech firms unknowingly, expose themselves because compliance is periodic, it's structured, it's predictable. Threats, they're nonstop. They adapt and they are unpredictable. So when you rely on compliance to validate security, you create a giant gap. And we've seen exactly how that gap plays out. Because you can just look at there's a lot of cases out there that have been in the news. Now, when compliance still leads to a breach, we can look at incidents like Enzo Clinical Labs and Innotiv. These weren't organizations ignoring compliance. They had IT teams, they had all the security tools in place, policies, and frameworks, and yet sensitive data was exposed, operations disrupted, trust was impacted. Why? Because the issue wasn't a lack of controls, it was a lack of visibility, delayed detection, there was gaps in response. And those are not compliance problems. Those are operational security problems. So the real question becomes, where are you assuming you're secure? So let's challenge that directly. Let's look into this because to the danger of assumed security, most IT leaders don't intentionally ignore risk. What happens instead is more, I'd say, subtle. Security becomes assumed. We implemented EDR. We have policies in place. We passed our audit. But no one is validating 24/7. Are alerts being investigated in real time? Is someone watching the environment 24/7? Can you detect abnormal behavior within minutes? Because having tools is not the same as having visibility. And having visibility is not the same as having response capability. So let me make this a little bit more practical. How do you test your reality? Because this is where most firms hesitate. So let me go over questions that expose some truth. It's going to get a little uncomfortable for a second here, because if you want to understand your real security posture, you need to start here. What data would we miss today if an attacker entered our environment? How long could someone operate without being detected? Who is actively monitoring our environment after hours? Are we validating alerts or just collecting them? Have we tested our response under real conditions? These are uncomfortable questions, I know. I've had to hear the answers of people being uncomfortable. Now, but they're the only ones that matter because they expose the difference between assumed protection and proven security. And this is where many internal teams tend to hit a wall, not because they lack skill, but because of reality. Here are the limits of, well, just the limitations of some internal security teams, because not everybody has these big budgets to build SOC teams. So let's be honest about something most organizations don't say out loud. Internal IT and security teams are managing infrastructure, supporting users, handling compliance, responding to issues. And on top of that, they're expected to monitor threats 24/7, investigate anomalies, respond immediately to a potential threat, contain and remediate the threat within minutes. That's not a skill gap. That's what we call in our business a capacity problem. And in biotech, where the stakes are extremely high, the gap becomes exposure. So what does a stronger model actually look like? Not more tools, not more policies, for crying out loud. It's something else. So I'm going to change gears a little bit here. So let's move from compliance to around the clock defense. The shift happening in more mature biotech firms is this: from are we compliant to are we continuously protected and validated? That shift introduces real-time monitoring across endpoints and users, 24/7 detection of abnormal behavior, immediate response capability, validation that controls are actually working. This is not about replacing internal teams. This is about extending their capability. And this is where the role of an MSSP actually makes sense, not as a vendor, but as an extension. So what is the strategic role of an MSSP? Let me just share for just a minute. When this is done correctly, a managed security partner is not just another tool or another service. It becomes an extension of visibility, a layer of 24/7 monitoring, a response capability that operates beyond business hours, but more importantly, a way to ensure that security is active, validated, and continuous, nonstop, not periodic, not assumed, because the cost of getting this wrong is not theoretical. It's measurable, and it can be very damaging if you get breached. So let's go over the consequences no one plans for. Let's bring this to business impact. A breach in biotech doesn't just mean data exposure, downtime, an inconvenience. This is what it really means. Delayed research timelines, regulatory scrutiny, loss of competitive advantage, potentially, impact on funding and valuation. And here's the part most firms underestimate. You don't need a catastrophic breach. You just need enough exposure, enough delay, some uncertainty to really impact how your organization is perceived. So where does this leave you? Well, let's close this the right way. Here's the question you can't ignore. If you take nothing else from this conversation, take this. You can be fully compliant, fully documented, fully aligned, have all the sexy security tools in place, have the smartest people in IT in your staff. You can still be exposed. So the real question is not, are we compliant? It's, are we actively detecting and responding to threats today? Because in biotech, your valuation, your timelines, and your intellectual property are sitting on top of that answer. Compliance is the starting point, it's not the safeguard, not even close. If your organization is relying on audits to validate security, you may already have gaps you can't even see. And at Single Point of Contact, well, we help biotech firms move beyond assumptions with 24/7 monitoring, real-time detection, and proven response capabilities. Because, well, in this environment, the real risk isn't non-compliance. It's believing you're protected when you're not. All right, I've gone on for quite a bit here. It's going on over 13 minutes. Now, if you found this valuable, subscribe for more biotech-specific cybersecurity insights. I share what I see on the front lines every week, from threat trends to protection strategies that actually work. So don't wait for the breach report to hit your desk. Stay ahead of the cyber threats. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more on cybersecurity in the biotech industry. Thanks for listening. Like,